So hi everyone, thank you. I've probably met with some of you before, so it's good to sort of see you again. Just going to be talking about some resources that CCPD can provide as you make a decision on a major, and then as you pursue employment opportunities with it. And I'll give you some statistics and names of companies that our BMEs have gone to in the past. Yeah, I think some of you have been to the CCPD before. Many of you probably haven't, so I will talk a little bit about that. Just a quick introduction. We're the Center for Career and Professional Development, typically located in the GCC. Right now we're remote. Um, and, as the next few slides will show you, we provide help with various things from, career exploration, self-assessment, etc., to resume and cover letter help, networking help, interview prep, salary negotiation, etc. We do walk-ins, which are listed on Handshake. Those are usually quicker, or not appointments, but quicker meetings, 10 to 15 minutes for like a quick question or, a resume review, and then 30-minute appointments for something more involved, especially interview prep or looking over a resume and cover letter, etc. I also have students email me with, quick questions about salary negotiation and anything else. I know you all are super busy, so I review resumes by email as well. So, and we also put together these hiring stats. So at the end of, every academic year, we survey graduating students and ask them about where they're going, salary, etc. So it's self-reported, so we don't get everyone reporting, but we do get pretty good numbers. And these hiring statistics, if you go to our website, there's on the right-hand side a category on hiring statistics. So you can see full-time employers by major, you can see co-op employers by major, and salary statistics. And I think all of those really give you a good sense of the different opportunities available with each major for co-op and full-time. And then a sense of salary. The salary statistics we have, as I'll discuss, are not broken down by location or anything like that. So we always recommend investigating even further, but I think they're helpful as a touch point. So here are some employer examples in addition to those that are here today. So we have Boston Scientific. They focus on medical devices, Celgene pharmaceutical company, St. Jude Medical, you've probably heard of. It's one of the, if not the leading children's hospital in the country, focused on childhood cancers and pediatric disease. And then you have the US Patent Office, which is a government agency that issues patents to inventors and businesses. So each of these, we had a student go to, these statistics are from class of 2018. So it goes to show you with BME, definitely, medical devices and pharmaceuticals are great options, but there are also other options, and you'll hear that tonight as well from our alums and our current student too. And then these are just some examples of opportunities that I pulled from Handshake that are available right now. So you have a couple internships for Regeneron, um, nearby. They do summer internships and sometimes co-ops as well. And there's some research opportunities. And then as far as full-time opportunities at a variety of different companies, things focused on research, medical devices, design, etc. And these are just some of the ones that I pulled off. There are definitely more as well. And as far as salary, so this is from class of 2018. Like I said, those reporting, so average was 60,000, around 60,000. And then you'll see the range. So again, the range is quite wide. You'll see here, this can depend on location. Typically salaries, for instance, in the New York City area are going to be higher than more or less populated or less urban areas. Also, as I talked about, the wide range of opportunities available to BME, from research to pharmaceuticals, impacts the salary range as well. And then you'll see, oh, BLS.gov is a great website just generally for researching different careers. So I definitely recommend it. I pulled the 2019 median pay for biomedical, the title biomedical engineer, which might not include everyone, doing something related to biomedical engineering. You'll see the number here, BLS.gov. This is a median from, everyone. So not just entry level, which is what our students would be, but those more experienced. So that's why that number is higher. So just to give you a sense of that. And like I mentioned, this isn't all that we do, a bunch of different things. I think I forgot to mention the grad school applications as well. Self-assessment, like I said. Um, yeah, Kristen and I always advocate for this self-assessment tool called Focus 2, which is available on Handshake. And I can always refer you to it, and then we can always discuss results as well. And it's a really interesting and helpful self-assessment tool that gives you an idea of, well, you answer questions about your skills and interests and values, and then it gives you ideas of careers and majors that might match to those. So students find it, I think, just thought-provoking to look at. Yeah, and that's about it. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to email me. That's my email. You can make an appointment on Handshake. And yeah, I'll open it up to some questions now. You can always drop them in the chat, or yeah, just voice them if you want to unmute yourself too. And oh, go ahead.
Yes, and Lindsay, I did, because you mentioned Focus 2, and I love it too. I actually dropped a link in the chat that if you go there, you'll see a lot of the awesome resources that Lindsay was just talking about through the Career Center, and of course, one of them being Focus 2. So as Lindsay mentioned, it's something that you can do and then meet with her, and then she can talk you through it. And it can give you a really awesome direction in regards to, finding a major, because it can connect to one of those.
Yeah, definitely. I just met with a student last week, actually, who you referred to me, Kristen, and he's
Good.
between, yeah, and we'll talk more about it, but he didn't know what, he had some things in mind. And I think even just looking at the list of potential or majors and careers that came out of his results helped him realize, okay, I don't want this, I don't want that, but this sounds really interesting.
Hmm.
And some things that he hadn't thought of before too. So, yeah, helpful generally for if you don't know what you want to do, or if you're deciding between 2 or 3 majors, etc.
Yeah. And what's really awesome about that too, which is what you were basically alluding to, which is just because you get the results, it does not mean you have to do that, but it gives
Mhm.
you options where you can continue to feel empowered to say, oh, no, that's not right, but that one definitely is.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
that's what I. Yeah.
so Lindsay, right now is registration, which is probably the biggest thing on everyone's mind right now. So I wondered if you had a quick second to tell us about how recruiters look at classes when it comes to like um the like hiring process, and you'll especially with internships, thinking about first years with their starting courses. Wondering if you could give us a little of your insight on that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question because we get that a lot. We do recommend listing relevant courses on your resume. So typically, I say, especially with freshmen, you don't necessarily have to list courses like calc and physics, even though they're important. Those are just courses that most students take here. But even classes like and I'm probably going to get the title wrong, but Intro to Engineering Graphics and CAD, Intro to Chemical Engineering, etc. Those can be helpful to list. And then once you start moving forward, you know, through your time here at RPI, there will be certain classes that employers will look for. And we always recommend, so most of you next year will take Intro to Engineering Design. That's a great one to put on your resume, and even expand upon as far as projects go. we always recommend having a project section because employers love to see, they love to just see projects and that hands-on work. So as a freshman, I know you take a lot of sort of um, foundational courses, but even putting a short, I wouldn't copy and paste a course description, but putting a course description that, especially for those hands-on classes, maybe like the CAD class, that emphasizes sort of what you've done and what you've learned, can be really useful. And then you always want to have a skills section as well that shows those skills that you've learned in those classes, whether I keep mentioning CAD or NX or whatever, MATLAB as you go forward. Yeah, but I can always help. Um, I can always help figure out which classes to list and how to describe them most effectively too.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge plug to say that as you transition to college, another thing that transitions with you is your resume. And the look of the resume that you had in high school is going to change. The language that you use is going to change, which actually I feel like Bethany could probably address later once we
Mhm.
get her up. But Lindsay's here to help you go through that process. So it's nothing, just like picking out your classes
Yeah.
for the spring, it's nothing you have to do by yourself.
Exactly. And
So,
oh, sorry. No,
no,
yeah,
no, it's fine. Yeah.
sorry. No, and freshmen often say to me, I don't have anything to put on my resume. And I get that. You feel like, you haven't had the opportunity to do much. But like I just said, there are ways, you know, to include courses, to include skills. For freshmen, and even early, first semester sophomores, it's okay to have high school stuff, especially if there were substantive projects or leadership. Opportunities, that's also good. And for a resume, we could talk more about this in a meeting, but jobs like camp counselor, CVS, Target, etc. There are ways to depict those on a resume that really showcase the skills that you gained from those experiences. So that's what I can help you with. I think it's you'll get used to it as you go on, but it's hard at the beginning. So yeah, as Kristen said, here to help.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Lindsay.
you.
As always, it's wonderful to have you join us as we start out
Thank you.
industry hour. So
You
I will
too.
be
Thanks.
I will be sharing Lindsay's contact information, of course, tomorrow, in the email. So if you want to talk to her about any of the stuff she brought up tonight, well, now you know who she is, so she's a little bit more familiar. All right, now we are transitioning over to our next part of the evening, of course, which is our panelist section where we will meet 3 biomedical alumni and 1 biomedical engineering student. So I'm passing the reins over to my friend and colleague, Valerie Swenson.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for being here. I am Valerie Swenson, and I'm the Biomedical Engineering Academic Advisor in the School of Engineering First Year Advising Hub. I see a lot of familiar names on here, which is exciting. And for those of you who haven't met me and I haven't met yet, I hope that you'll consider biomedical engineering as a potential major here at Rensselaer. So let's think. I have been at Rensselaer since 2016, and biomedical engineering was the first group that I actually started advising while I was here. So it's a major near and dear to my heart, a great department. It's been exciting to see where my students who I started with in 2016 just graduated in 2020, what they do next. And we'll get to hear today actually from alumni as well as current students here. Um, so to talk about biomedical engineering, let's think here. So it's a very exciting major to me for many different reasons. It's a major that is growing in terms of employment within the field and things like that. If you look at some of the labor statistics and other helpful bits of information that are out there online, as well as from the CCPD and some of the resources that they have, it's a growing field. And especially now, in the world that we live in, I think there's a lot of application, a lot of very exciting things that biomedical engineers can do. And you'll get to hear about some of that tonight. So what I will be doing is stopping talking here, and I will be introducing our panelists for tonight. The first thing we'll do is each panelist will give a brief 2-minute introduction to themselves. Again, we have 4 panelists, and then after the intro, we will go into some of the questions we have prepared. And at the very end, if you have any questions, we can, unmute you. We can put your questions in the chat, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is introduce our 4 panelists quickly. First, we have Elisa Trescott, followed by Raya Lim, Sarah Kogel, and Bethany Holub. So first, we're going to start with Elisa. So what I'll do is ask you to unmute yourself, do a brief, 2-minute introduction, and then we will move on to our next panelist before going into questioning. Elisa?
Hey, okay. I think I'm here now. Yeah, so I'm Elisa Truscott. I graduated from RPI in 2006 with a degree in biomedical engineer. I was originally part of the class of 2005, but I did co-op while I was there, and my co-op was at NASA, which is where my current employment is. I'm at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. You'll see 77 degrees and the sun is going down, so I thought I'd bring some warm weather to all of y'all. I grew up in Pleasant Mountain, Pennsylvania, and I moved here to League City, Texas to follow my passion and my dream job, which fortunately RPI helped me get here, and I've loved basically every year of it so far. I'm going to keep it brief, and I will pass it on to the next person then.
All right, Raya, that'll be you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raya. I'm class of 2007, biomedical engineer, a studio arts minor. And after my first job, I also got my master's in biomedical sciences, so I'm staying on brand. I was born in the Philippines, but grew up in and still am in northern New Jersey, and I've probably heard all your jokes. So I work currently at a company called Pixie Scientific. We make smart incontinence products. Our first product on the market is one that helps caregivers monitor for early signs of urinary tract infection, which can affect people that are older, those with cognitive decline, those with limited mobility, or a combination therein. I do manufacturing quality technically, so that's the manufacturing side as well as quality management, aka paperwork. But because the team is so small, I get to do a ton of different things. Like my first love, R&D, I do graphic design, I do some customer education, some fulfillment, biz dev. So no day is a boring day.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so next up for our introductions, we will have Sarah Kreigel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Kegel, and I graduated from RPI in 1998, so that was a long time ago. Currently, I'm working at the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, and that's in Rockville, Maryland. It's right outside Washington, D.C., so it's a good place to be. There's a lot going on lately. Last week, there's been a lot going on. But it's a good place as far as job opportunities, too. There's a lot of pharmaceutical industry right around here, so it's a good place to look once you're getting ready to graduate or for co-ops, because there are many, many companies in this region. So the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, it might sound like it's a government agency, but it's actually a nonprofit organization, and we develop reference standards for pharmaceuticals. So there are monographs that are written that outline different tests to be done for quality, purity, that kind of thing, which are required by pharmaceutical companies to complete for all of their batches before they release it. We work very closely with the FDA, so it's kind of a unique position to be in. And in addition to that, the USP is actually 200 years old this year, so it's an interesting history to have and to be part of an organization that's been around for so long. So I don't want to go over too long. I want to pass it off to the next person so we have enough time for all of the questions that we have for tonight.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Bethany Holub.
Hi, everybody. I'm sure my room looks a little familiar because I am a student here at RPI. I'm the LA in Sharp Hall. Over this past year, I actually took my co-op semester and extended it a little bit longer, and I worked at Terumo Medical Corporation in Elkton, Maryland. So I lived in just outside of Elkton in Newark, Delaware. And I was able to work there for an entire year. And that was partly just because I asked. I said, hey, it just doesn't happen to work with my schedule to work from September to March. Can I extend it? And they said, sure, we'd love to have you a little bit longer. So I worked there straight through the pandemic. Currently, I'm back at RPI and I'm about to move back to Michigan, where I'm originally from, for my winter break. It'll be great to see my family a little bit longer. And I'm class of 2021. So this spring, I plan to graduate with my bachelor's degree. So I'm not planning to stay for the co-term right now. But really, the world is your oyster. Biomedical allows you to go so many places. And I'll pass it back to Valerie. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect, everyone. Thank you. So we're about to hear about the many different things that you can do with a biomedical engineering degree in this next portion, which is our Q&A. So we've got a bunch of different questions on deck for our panelists here. So what I will be doing is the first question we'll have is going to be kind of a round robin. As much as I can, I'd like to keep it the same order. So it's going to be, well, order that's on my form. So we'll have Sarah, followed by Rhea, followed by Elisa, followed by Bethany for most of these different questions, excluding the first question, which again, I'll have everyone answer. So after our questions we have here, again, we'll open it up to questions for you all in the audience at the very end. So the first question that I have here that I will ask of each of you, so Sarah, Rhea, Elisa, Bethany, what made you decide to be a biomedical engineer? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
Okay, so when I came to RPI, I was undecided as far as engineering goes. I knew I wanted to do engineering. I had always liked math and science. But I didn't know really what all the options were for majors within engineering. And it was helpful that first year to really take the opportunity to look around and see what was out there. So, you know, we didn't have sessions exactly like this, but they were similar. So you could learn about the different majors and about the different career opportunities within those majors. And I ultimately decided on biomedical engineering because I wanted to do something that would allow me to help other people in some way. And this was a major that was easy for me to see that application. I started originally in medical devices related to cardiology, and that's very easy to see how that can impact other people and have a, you know, something that you're doing for the greater good. So that's really how I decided on biomedical engineering.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So next up, we will have Rhea with the same question. What made you decide to be a biomedical engineer?
Okay, sorry to beep over you, Val. So I had always been interested in creative things from very young. Both of my parents were physicians, so there's that influence. And when I was 2, my dad needed a heart transplant. And he only got to that transplant by being on a Jarvik artificial heart. That was his breakthrough transplant. So there's all these influences that kind of got me there. But it really wasn't until in the spring of senior year in high school when my principal was like, you know, there's this thing. And it was biomedical engineering. And she also, in the same breath, suggested RPI because it was a very established program. And so from that moment, I looked into it, I applied, I was accepted, and it's been medical devices ever since.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. And then next up, we will ask the same very question to Elisa. And what made you decide to become a biomedical engineer?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be an astronaut and work at NASA when I grew up, and I had no idea how to get there. I grew up in a very rural community. I lived in a log cabin on a dirt road, middle of nowhere. We didn't have AP classes in high school. I didn't have calculus at my high school, and I didn't know a single engineer. But I was good at math and science, so everyone said, well, maybe you should check out engineering. And once I got to RPI, the diversity baked into the curriculum there, it was just such a wide range of classes that you take from all the different departments that it really interests me because I had no idea where I was going or how I was getting there. And it was clear that there were a number of paths available at graduation that I wasn't deciding the rest of my life based on the major that I selected. I was getting an education that would take me in a number of different directions. I also really enjoyed basic anatomy, which is one of the classes I had in high school. And then finally, two more points. I went to all of the panels that interested me, like this for the undecided engineers. I went to like environmental engineering and civil engineering. I literally had no idea what I wanted. And then I think what really sealed the deal was a role model to me was the captain on the cheerleading team at the time. And she was a senior working on biomedical engineering, and she was planning to go on to med school. And just seeing how successful she was and talking to her about what her path had been at RPI helped me decide that that's what I wanted to do because I could have all of these options open to me at the end of my degree.
Perfect. Thank you. And then next we will ask Bethany this very same question, which is what made you decide to become a biomedical engineer?
So for me, it definitely was a combination of a lot of different things. My dad was a mechanical and he's still alive. We still like him, keep him around for a little bit. He's a mechanical engineer at Ford, and he's been able to jump around a lot within Ford. And of course, I'm like, I want to get out of the car industry. I don't want to have anything to do with engineers. And his answer was, well, just because you're an engineer doesn't mean you're mechanical. And so this led to a lot of different explorations. I really loved my AP environmental science class and my biology class. I loved that teacher I had in high school. So it really led to some of my thought processes, like what do I want to do? And I really liked the imaging. I liked the human aspects. And so I never was able to kind of pick one very specific thing to do. And I like the fact that biomedical engineering is a jack of all trades. You just are more related to the body. And so you can be related to the body in terms of like building machines that build things for the body, or you can be directly related to making pharmaceuticals that are going to be going into the body and like literally bringing drugs in there. So it's just a wide variety. And I never wanted to, I'll say, pigeonhole myself into one specific thing. And that's partly why I decided biomedical engineering is the way to go. It just gives me the opportunity to try whatever I want. And if I want to try something new, I can always move around. There's so many places to go. And every time you talk to anyone in the industry, they all have their own backstory of trying out different things and finding really where they belong.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that, everyone. What I really liked is we got to hear personal experiences and, kind of connecting how backgrounds, led into what you want to do, and also, interest in health of the human body generally. So this next part is going to be individual questions, and I'm just going to kind of start asking in a moment here. So again, we'll start with Sarah. And for those of you who might not know, for this program, we have individuals submit, information about themselves and kind of about their background. So these questions that I'll be asking are based upon everyone's background here, and we're excited to have you get to learn a little bit more about each of them. So Sarah, we have you up first. So my first question that I have here for you is that in your submission materials, you'd mentioned the importance of the co-op program here and your participation. So my question for you is, can you tell our audience a bit about your experience and how that helped you choose your future career?
Sure. So I do think the co-op program is very important. For me, it helped helped me really see what it was going to be like to be an engineer and get some experience at the same time. One of the things that I hear from a lot of young people coming right out of school, how do I get the experience if I haven't had a job yet? So recent grads struggle with getting that experience as they're applying for their first job, and the co-op experience really gives you a leg up over other candidates who have not done internships or have not done co-ops. And it gives you an opportunity as well to see what some of the jobs out there could be, because like some of the other ladies have said, with biomedical engineering, you can do a lot of different things, and the co-op program lets you try that out a little bit without making a huge commitment to any full-time job. So for me, it was also a big confidence boost, because I could really do some things in the co-op that proved that I was able to, I guess, to hack it as an engineer. And when I was in engineering school, there were not a lot of women. I guess there were maybe 20%. So when I went out to do my first co-op, there were really not a lot of women out there. So it helped me feel good about my decision, knowing that I could make it, I guess, with some of the big boys out there. So that was helpful.
Great, thank you. And you are actually our second question here too, so don't turn the camera and mic off quite yet. So again, this is based upon material you had submitted. So you began in your career early as a development engineer, correct? And have since moved into more some product direction and management. So I guess, can you talk a bit about what you do in these areas and your transition into those kinds of roles?
Sure. So currently, I'm the director of operations for a reference standard production department at USP, and I didn't really seek out that position. Along the way, I've had some different opportunities, and I didn't let my long-term goal, I guess, shut out any of those opportunities. I kept an open mind, and when I was given, I guess, the chance to take on more responsibility, it may not have been exactly what I had envisioned for myself, but it opened a lot of doors for me in my career later on. So when I first started out as a development engineer, I was doing R&D at a catheter company, and we were making catheters that would be used for angioplasty and angiography. And then from there, I actually transitioned to another company that was doing some work with, at that time, it was like the early 2000s. So it was work with HIV testing and HIV test kits. And so that was very different from catheters, but also very, very interesting. And there was a lot of need for it at that point in time. And then from there, I moved to the U.S. Pharmacopoeia really for financial reasons, because the company that I was working for was going under, and you sometimes find that in biotech, some of these newer startup companies, they may not last as long as you would hope, and you have to look for another job. And so that's how I actually ended up at USP. The company I had been working for was just not going to make it, and I needed to find something else. So then when I went to USP, it was related to biomedical engineering, but a little bit different. And I think I've moved into management because I can have a bigger impact. I may not have as much hands-on action every day, which I do miss sometimes, but I have my hands in a lot of different projects, and I can make a bigger difference. So that's how I ended up where I am now.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All right. So next for our panel questioning, we'll move on to Rhea for our next two questions. So actually, this first question I'm very excited about. We're in the middle of student registration, and I'm getting a lot of questions about minors specifically. So, and you mentioned this during your introduction that you were a studio arts minor, as well as within your submission of materials. So, and also you mentioned how your studio arts courses kind of broke up the technical classes. which is, what we hope HAS courses will help do for students and also help them to find something they're interested in. So, can you talk about, how your studio arts minor is something that you use now within the creative side of your job?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't reach out to resources like you, and I didn't even know really about the minor and what the requirements were until I was 3 classes in, and I figured, why not? So I just kept taking arts classes. Like I said, I was always into arts. So that minor was one of my easiest, best decisions I ever made. It took so few classes, and it was essentially what I wanted to do anyway. And each class, like sculpture was taught by an aeronautical engineer. Painting was very technical. And so there were technical aspects of the classes, but they also afforded a creative outlet. And there was quiet time in the studio if we were doing figure drawing or extra painting time within the studio. And it really did a good job, at least for me, for tempering the demands of my different classes. And nowadays, especially with COVID, it's been nice to have had those classes that have turned into hobbies. I've been doing a lot of watercolor recently, especially for Inktober. And I'm also constantly doing graphic design work, even for work. So for my day job, I'm doing things like asset design for the website or printed materials that we distribute to potential customers. I'm also doing some CAD, which is technical, but there's also like back of the napkin sketching, transferring to the CAD program, and that's for product improvements, new product concepts, or test fixtures. And I'm also doing side projects. I've done a few people's friends' weddings invitations, for example. So it's nice to have been able to keep that up while also, earning credit for it as a minor. And I recommend it. If there's anything that anyone is interested in and you still are interested after you take a couple classes, for sure, go for it and take the opportunity to take classes that you may not have at your disposal in the real world, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great advice for both of those. And that's often how it happens with students too, is they get 3 classes in, they're like, well, one more, but
Yeah.
it's very cool that that was both your outlet, something you continued with, and you built into your, job as a biomedical engineer too.
Exactly.
So my next question for you is that it also seems like your current position takes on both some management and quality assurance / education aspects. So can you speak about your transition or working within these roles?
Of course. So I interviewed for this position as it was listed, being previously always in R&D, and quality management and manufacturing are usually 2 different departments in a more standard company, and this was a job listing for one human. But so my pitch was sort of, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, meaning in R&D, you're very reliant on the quality department to put input into your projects and into your experiments. And to carry out any of those experiments, you do need manufacturing on your side. So you work with them very closely too, right? So I felt ready to use that experience, having worked with those facets in other positions, to apply them to this company, knowing that no one else on the team had been in industry before, and I wanted to make things better. So once I got over the jitters of now not just following procedures, but writing them, I realized this is what I signed up for. And it really was me being given a chance to show my expertise, show my experience, have it shine. And it's been 4.5 years, so it's still there. I realized in the job that I've been able to do things like customer education. So we'll do in-services with nurses and with aides at like assisted livings. And even speaking at trade shows, knowing the product is one thing, but then talking about it really shows you what you know. So teaching is the best way to show what you've learned and learn better and learn further. And then the one thing about management, to zoom out, I'm sorry, that's a lot of parts to this question.
It was a very loaded question, sorry.
Yeah, and it's the last one. But one thing about management per se, so at one point after grad school, I was coaching volleyball. Right now, I'm president of the New Jersey Alumni Chapter. And in working, I've learned that once you know the capabilities of your team members, the real challenge can be the personality management. And you guys will get a taste of this. Someone mentioned IED for sure. As a cross-functional team, you'll get a taste of that. You'll also get it in your senior design. And it can be very challenging, but it's really commensurately rewarding to help get a team to come together and do good work. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And so IED is Introduction to Engineering Design. You all will take that sophomore year, and then senior capstone is one of the things we spoke about. So for biomedical engineers, it's a 2-part capstone, your fall and then your spring lead into one another, which is pretty cool. And yes, definitely tons of team and personality kind of things going on. So great.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So next up for our questions, we have 2 for Elissa. And so here we go. So you work at NASA Space Center, and initially we'd met last year through this program. That was something that wasn't even really on my radar as something that biomedical engineers, that could transition into and work with. But can you talk a bit about how you got here?
Yeah, so basically it's perseverance and a ton of really, really hard work. Like I said earlier, I always wanted to be an astronaut. And then around like high school, I realized, well, you don't just get hired to be an astronaut. You have to go be a person in the real world first. You could be a doctor, you could be a researcher, you could have a real job. And that's eventually how you'll find your path to the astronaut corps. So I decided, okay, I need to find a job. Well, maybe I should aim to work at NASA in case they don't ever pick me. I did a bunch of research in high school, and I was really good at math and science. And it was clear from internet searching that NASA hired a lot of engineers. So I thought that's probably a good starting point. So I'm at engineer now. I still don't know what kind of engineering. And like I said earlier, it was a very rural community. I didn't know a single engineer growing up. To this day, all of the engineers that I know are now from contacts at school and contacts from work. The career field was definitely a huge leap into the unknown for me, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just had a goal. And I found RPI because of its engineering reputation. And they had some pretty pictures in the magazine that I got after I took the PSAT in like 7th or 8th grade. And so I started researching it. And, then internet also helped me put together that NASA has some connections with RPI. Specifically, George Lowe was one of the big managers in the Apollo program. And he was also, I know he's president of RPI. He also held some leadership positions at the Johnson Space Center, which is where I am right now. And then astronaut Jack Swigert, he was, an astronaut in the Apollo days, and he has an RPI degree as well. And now today we have another astronaut, Reed Wiseman, who I think he graduated in '97. And Rick Mastracchio, who's got a degree over from the Hartford campus. So anyway, that's how RPI became my #1 college pick, because it was clear that they had some sort of connection to NASA, and they were a very good engineering school. And if I want to end up at NASA, this was a potential way to get there. So then once I got to RPI, then I started researching, okay, so now how do I get to NASA? And unfortunately, I started doing this research about halfway through my education, because, I was taking calculus and physics, and I was nowhere near ready to figure out how to make that jump. It was almost too late because I found out that the co-op program is the way to go. And at this point, I was about halfway through the fall semester of my junior year. So semester number 5 of 8. And I was taking extra credits every semester because, like I said, perseverance and a lot of hard work, and I kept trying to get ahead. So I was getting like to the bare wire of, if I don't co-op in the next semester, I do not meet RPI's requirements to let me go and then come back. I was too close to graduation by the definition at the time. I don't know if there's still a definition like that. But anyway, and then I found out, in RPI, NASA doesn't just come to RPI and recruit. So now I need to find out how to get my resume and my name to a person at NASA to look at me to say, yes, we'll have you in the co-op program. So I had to go out of my way, and I found out how to do it online. And then I walked myself into the Career Development Center, which I know now has a new name. And they helped me figure out how to get on the radar here at the Space Center and to make sure that my application actually got to the right place. I believe they made a phone call on my behalf just to ensure, because it wasn't clear, all internet submission stuff. I had a phone interview, ironically, with my neighbor who lives right next door. I found out after I bought a house here many years later that he was the guy who interviewed me and hired me. It was a great phone interview. It was so weird. It was a Saturday morning. We had to go to a football game. I was a cheerleader, and I did my interview, and I went to the football game in Cloud 9 because I just talked to somebody who works at NASA, and it was amazing. That was followed up by a rejection letter, and I responded with a very thoughtfully written email. You know, they had encouraged me to apply again the next semester, and I said, well, unfortunately, I will not be able to go anywhere unless I go in January. And so it was clear to them that I was very interested. And I think it was Bethany earlier who said something about, like, she asked, hey, can I stay longer? And there's a lot of things in life that if you don't go out of your way to say something or to ask for it, it's just nothing's going to be served to you on a silver platter. So you kind of have to stick your neck out there a couple times. And so with a little bit of luck, I think one of the students that they had hired decided he was going to go to the White Sands campus and do research out there. So they had an extra spot open for students at the Johnson Space Center. I think this fell in together. But in any case, they called me back and said, actually, we do have a spot for you. Would you like it? And I said, of course. So 2 months later, I found myself driving into the main gate for the first time, and I felt like it was a dream. And today, still, I pinch myself every time I get to drive past the rockets and swipe my badge at Mission Control, because it really is like what I set out to do with my life, and it's been amazing.
That is really cool. Yes, that's awesome. Great story. So you mentioned George Lowe. I don't know if you've been when you're on campus here. Have you been to the Lowe Gallery?
Yeah. Well, I was at an early iteration of it. It might have been expanded, but it was there on campus when I was there. It was a nice, quiet place to go sit. Yes. Look at beautiful pictures.
So I'm not quite sure if it's open right now, but for everyone on the line here, there's a beautiful, it's on the 5th floor of the CII called the Lowe Gallery, and there's pictures and displays and like important, awesome things that I just can't believe are at, RPI for all of us to get to experience. And when people visit, that's typically where I bring them, is through the Lowe Gallery. So side note on our very campus. Hi. So the questions that I'm going to ask you as our resident current student here. This year you had a co-op experience for biomedical engineering specifically. And I know you talked a bit about this in your introduction, but can you tell us more about your experience?
So let me tell you, when I first started applying for my co-ops, I applied to everything and anything. It wasn't I'm specifically interested in catheters, or, I'm specifically interested in this or that. It was, you are a medical company and you are remotely near somewhere I know and could go to. So I have family that lives in Delaware and the DC area, and I was like, it's close enough, let's apply. So honestly, it was just an application, and I received an email back, and my answer was yes. When you start putting up barriers and say no, that's when they typically are like, oh, I guess it's not going to work out or something. And they said, would you be able to work from September to March? And I was like, yes, of course that would work. I like rolled out of bed from a nap, and I got this email, and I was like, they replied to me. That's a start. And it wasn't a no. So after that, they said, okay, we'll set up an interview in the near future. And it kind of started like, okay, it'll be in the near future. And I didn't hear anything from them. And so I started taking it week by week, and I was like, okay, if I don't hear from them, I'm going to like pursue it more. And so ultimately I had my interview. It sounded, since I'm in New York, there was no way to just pop on down to Delaware for an on-site interview, especially like that was all before COVID happened. So it was their first time that they did an on-camera interview with like a new prospective internship participant. And so it was wonderful. And then once I was there, they really just started, I'll say, educating me about everything and anything. They really did not expect me to walk in there and have all of the knowledge going in. They said, you're a student, we don't expect anything from you. And so some of the traits that I was able to bring were very helpful. So when I took CAD my freshman year, I did not know what CAD was beforehand. They said, you need to download NX. And I was like, what is that? So it was a big struggle. And the first day of class, I walked in and I went to the TA, walked directly up to the TA, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I can't make a line. And so they were able to like walk me through that process and like really bring me up to speed for what I needed to know by asking those questions. And so that was like a plus side I could bring to my internship, because MX is probably like the most unuser friendly thing you can find. And so if you can manage to do that, you can manage to do anything. So once I was there, I started working in, they literally said, do you know anything? And I said, no. And so I had a mentor, and he kind of explained what a catheter is. And a catheter, for those of you who don't know, they do not all go into the urinary tract. Some of them go into the blood vessels in like the radial artery or the femoral artery, and they're mainly just a straw for your vessels to get tooling for surgery from place A to place B. And place A is outside of the body. Place B can be anywhere from, I think somebody mentioned earlier, angioplasty. So that's typically going more towards the heart. It also can just be clearing blockages in the vessels, etc. So wide variety of applications, but all of a sudden I started learning a ton. To this day, I will tell you, I learned more in my first week at my co-op than I felt I had learned in 3 semesters straight at RPI, because I was there from the beginning of sophomore year straight through to the end of Arch. And I was like, I can't do another semester in a row. My brain does not function that well. And so I went through, and I just was able to jump into projects after I finished some of the training. So some of the training included things like read these internal methods that we have. And it was like how to use an Instron. I had no idea what an Instron was. It's a big machine that pulls stuff apart. And then all of a sudden I'm trained on it. I can do it by myself. And there's like, okay, we need you to do this, or we need you to do that. And it was a bunch of hands-on experience that started with, we need you to run tests, to, okay, Joe over here is going to explain this test to you. You need to write up the test method for it. And so I got to start working on those test methods. And then it worked into, okay, we're having an issue with this. It's called PTFE, and it's not forming the right way. How can we form it the right way? And so during the pandemic, I had an entire design of experiments set up that I needed to go into the lab for. And they said, okay, since you've set it up, you have the parameters, you know, you want to test these things. We're basically going to test all of these points around the outside here. And then we're going to plot, like something will happen in the middle, and we'll try and see where the pattern occurs. And with that, I was able to go in during the pandemic. And then I started asking my mentor for help. And he's like, Bethany, you did all this work. You have the answers. I don't. And so that was really cool when I started to realize I was doing the stuff that a basic engineer one would do. I was there for enough time. I had to hand projects back off to other people. So my co-op experience definitely started to just go into other things. And even during the pandemic, like while we were stuck at home, I was like, okay, I'm bored. Like I've written my reports as far as I can go. How do I do more stuff? And they have something called Skunkworks projects. And they're like, hey, we have this idea. And if you're bored, or you kind of need a break from whatever you're working on, just to get like that outside perspective, sometimes you just work on these. And so I was able to start working on a Skunkworks project where they're like, we know we put a catheter into an artery or a vessel or a vein, whatever it is, we put this in here, but we don't know how that's impacting the rest of the body. So we want to kind of see where the forces are, kind of start to create a model for this. And I said, okay, cool, I can roll with this. And so I started just going for it. I was like, CAD, I can do that. Let's figure it out. And so admittedly, sometimes it runs very slowly, but you just work through it and you come up with an idea. And then from there, one of the principal engineers, which is like the highest level at our company, was able to start, I'll say, critiquing me and saying, okay, have you thought about it this way? Have you thought about it that way? And ultimately, by like the last 2 weeks of my co-op, I was able to print out a functional prototype. And admittedly, I originally printed it. I had this design. I was like, it's going to be awesome. It was too big for anything to print. So I had to break it into different sections, which is something else that you're aware of and you start working on. So I think there's a lot of diversity, especially in co-ops and internships. You just need to find the right company that can do it, and don't allow them to tell you no. Just continue to follow up.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I'll admit, this is exciting for me too, because we had talked right before you actually started your co-op. And aside from being like, how are things going quickly in email, you know, this is the most detail I've gotten to hear too. So
I was going to say, Valerie's the reason I'm still graduating with my cohort in spring of 2021. Originally, I was like, oh, I'll just stay an extra semester. And she's like, no, you have enough credits. We can make it work. The only time it comes to bite you in the butt is I still technically only have all of the credits from up through my Arch semester for registration today. So that means I am classified as a junior, and that means I cannot take my capstone. So I ultimately had to email the professor. I'm like, can you sign me into the senior level class that I'm a senior for and will be graduating with? And they're like, yeah, I got you. They sent it right back within a few minutes, and I'm now registered. I'm officially a senior. I'm officially graduating. So thanks to Valerie. She definitely has worked me through some of these things.
No, it's all you. And I'm glad that worked out. I knew it would. So my last question for you here is, in your submission for the materials for this program, you mentioned something that we talk about with students during meetings, which is the importance of, talking with people that you're connected with, either personally or professionally, about their work and education experiences. Can you share this advice that you gave with the group?
Yes. So one of the things I know someone else has mentioned how they grew up with no engineers. They didn't meet them until they got to RPI. And I do have a lot of engineers in my life. And so ultimately, it's just the ability to start asking those questions. At the beginning, I had this plan in mind. It was, I know how to lead people. I want to go to a company. I want to work my way around like the bottom level kind of intermediate stuff. And then I want to work up into management. I then got to my co-op and realized I do not like meetings, which is a really bad combination for a manager. You kind of have to be at those meetings getting that information. So I started to reevaluate what I actually wanted to do. And currently I have the drive. Taking a year off of school really gives you the drive to start finding what you're curious about, finding where you want to go, finding what you're interested in. And so it really stopped and made me think. And while I was on my co-op, I was like, okay, I might want to go to grad school. I am not totally opposed to it. And so as I was there, I realized I have all of these people here, and all of them have their own backgrounds. Some of them did a co-op, and there are other interns here. Others of them are straight out of school, and they're like, we did our senior design project, and now I'm here. And others of them have a lot of experience. They're mechanical engineers, and they're working in the biomed field. They have doctorates. They know that they did not want a doctorate. Some of them did the same thing I'm doing, and they're like, I'm applying to jobs. I applied to doctorates programs, and I'm here in the middle. And so for me, I never actually considered, okay, there was one day sophomore year I was like, should I go for a med school degree? And then I was like, no, I don't want to take the MCAT. So it took me one day to be like, that is not what I want in life. And upon doing that, I started, while we were all on our pandemic at home work stuff, I started, I think it was a mix between the places you'll go from Dr. Seuss, and I was like, you know what, I'll just start kind of interviewing these people that work here. They have experience, they know where they're at, and they can just kind of tell me about where they're at. And some people have those doctorates and they're able to just provide that insight, and others of them were like, I have a bachelor's degree, I am managing and I'm doing all of these things, but I'm doing it with only a bachelor's degree. And so it was nice to be able to see the difference in where people are going, because yes, there's going to be somebody out there and they're going to be more qualified than you, but it doesn't mean they have the same goals as you. And so that's where I started learning like what these people wanted and why they got their degrees, etc. So for me, I just love to ask questions and continuously be curious. And as I said, I did this design of experiments, and you probably have very minimal experience with any of these terms that I'm using. So that's where you basically go into a program and you say, okay, I need to test for this speed to this speed and this heat temperature to this heat temperature on this product. And we're going to then get all of these outputs and see if there's an impact on them. And when I did that, you think, okay, that's cool. I did 11 different iterations of that. And that's when I was like, no, I still want an answer. Like that did give me an answer, but it didn't give me a clear enough answer. And I still want a clear answer. So I'm looking for, I'll say, jobs and further education right now that just allow me to continue to grow as a person. So I don't want to necessarily go back to just doing R&D. I want to continue learning. I want to continue growing. And if that is in a large company that I can do R&D and I can move around a bit, so research and development and move throughout the company, that'll be great. If not, I might end up in a program that provides, hey, we're going to provide you an additional year of training because we want you to know how to do something, or going through a PhD program and being in a lab and saying, but why does that turn green when I do that? So I think that there's a lot of people, and you just have to not be afraid to ask the question. People love to talk about themselves. Just bring the questions.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And definitely agreed there. So great. So now we have Alyssa back on the line. Alyssa, sorry. And I'm going to ask you the last question we have here, and then we're going to open it up to our questions from students. So are you with us?
I'm here.
Perfect. Okay. So my last question I had for you is, and this is, we talked about everyone's experiences, but what I want to know a bit about is with your work at NASA, are there one or two classes that you can speak to that really helped, that incorporate well into your daily work with what you do?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to start by describing my job because we haven't really done that yet. I'm a flight controller and I work in mission control. This has been what I've done for I did a couple of tours in engineering as a co-op. You have to do multiple co-op tours before you graduate. The rule was 3 and I did 4. Ended up in mission control in operations, and that's really where I found my passion. So for 12 years, I operated the environmental, life support, and thermal control systems on the International Space Stations, where astronauts have maintained a continuous presence there for now more than 20 years, which hopefully all of you have heard recently in the news. There's been a lot of bad stuff and crazy things happening, but we have this really awesome milestone that NASA's been attempting to try to promote. When I was on console in that job, I was literally the single person in the room who was in charge of keeping the astronauts alive. I maintained their atmosphere by scrubbing their CO2. I made sure that there were no trace contaminant gases building up in their atmosphere. I did maintain their pressure in the perfect physiological zone to keep them alive, and I even recycled their water. We recycle their urine output and turn it into potable water that we then use for the crew to drink, to flush the toilet, and to then turn around and generate oxygen with. So it's mostly a closed loop life support system. We still have to launch some water to make up. We can't recycle 100% of everything. You do have some brine salts that come out of solution when you're doing your urine distillation. So anyway, I did that for 12 plus years, and then I joined the Orion flight control team. Orion is a spacecraft we're developing for a crew of 4, and our current mission is to fly to the moon and land the first woman and the next men on the moon in the coming years. And I'm still responsible in the same technical areas, so we're still doing life support, thermal control, and environmental control. But Orion doesn't have any extensive flight history like the space station does. So that's what I do. And I honestly can't put my finger on a single course that squarely falls within all of my job duties. But I can honestly say that I do draw knowledge and experience from almost all of them. Because as a flight controller, I had to come in and learn the spacecraft systems that I would be operating. We don't have textbooks. There are no clear user's manuals. There's some spotty technical documentation that gets strung together over time. But a lot of it is really just independent learning, thinking through scenarios in advance and developing your response to minimize winging it in the moment. We do write procedures and flight rules so that we have the things that we have spent time thinking out about ahead. I have reference documentation, so I have to know all of that, and then I also have to do my own self-study beyond that. And before they hand us the keys to fly solo, they put us in the spotlight where we're in simulations, and we demonstrate our communication skills, our technical knowledge, our problem-solving skills, as well as the ability to prioritize problems and then triage the system after it seems like everything has failed and all these failures have stacked up. And all of these skills are required in my job, and I definitely developed all of them deeply at RPI because our coursework is so challenging, and you work with such a wide variety of other students on classes like y'all were saying earlier with IED and your senior capstone project. Now, on the other hand, compared to most of the colleagues on my team who have aerospace and mechanical backgrounds, I definitely understand the physiological consequences to poorly maintaining the atmosphere and the reasons why we have the boxes that we have to control into. And that's because of the advanced physiology class that we took. I don't know if you guys still do it with Albany Med, but we even got to go over to their campus, and it was really amazing. And whenever I talk to flight surgeons about various environmental requirements or problems that we're working through, I really get it and understand where they're coming from, where I think some of my colleagues kind of just like, all right, well, tell me what box you want me to be in. And, you know, I'm just fascinated and interested by the human body because of my background, and especially all the things that I learned in physiology.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen in a moment, but I am so glad to have heard from each of you ladies and to have learned about, you know, what you do in your everyday jobs. And I hope that the students who are within biomedical engineering listening in on the line or perhaps considering, you can see all the different applications now and into the future of your degree.
That was perfect timing. I put a carrot in my mouth. Thank you so much, Val. That was such a great panel. Thank you to our panelists, of course. Sorry, I'm trying to not choke on this carrot. I would love, we do have a couple of student questions, and they're really, really good student questions. So if our panelists wouldn't mind, if you all want to turn on your videos so we can see your faces, and then we can go through the questions that I have. And of course, everyone listening, if you continue to have more questions, obviously don't be shy. Throw them in the chat. You can message them privately. And if we do have a second at the end of this, I'll even, if you want to unmute your mic and ask a question. But let's get started. So the first question I have is, do you think a sustainability minor relates to biomedical engineering? And how can I incorporate sustainability with biomedical engineering? Any of you are welcome to jump right into that.
Okay, I don't have a ton of experience in the industry, but a lot of medical devices that are made are single-use devices. And so having a sustainability background will probably also be beneficial, especially considering the fact that as we talked about it in my job, we were talking about new products, and one of the new products we were looking at, they said, okay, it's single use. And then I was like, wait, but couldn't this be somehow like multi-use or not waste quite as much? Because I took environmental science in high school. I really liked environmental science in high school. And all of a sudden I'm watching how much waste we have in the medical industry. And it's just kind of based off of the fact that like, it's fine because it's the medical community. And like that's how it is. And I was like, but it really bugs me just a little bit. And so a sustainability background will definitely assist you in some way, shape, or form, whether that's environmental health and safety kind of stuff or more on the application and quality, et cetera. You can definitely apply some of that stuff. Also, while I'm talking, I just want to say, Alyssa, your background looks like the best place ever. I now see the draw towards Texas.
I love that. I agree also. Thank you so much, Bethany. Do any of you have anything to add to the that question? Awesome. All right. So the next question is organic chem isn't required for biomedical engineering when you're on the non-med school path, but the student is interested in taking it. Would you recommend it? How useful is it? And in what ways?
So when I was in biomedical engineering, it was required for everybody, even if you were not on the med school path. And I would say that in the field that I've gone into, which is related to pharmaceuticals, it's very helpful to have some background. I work with a lot of chemists, and a lot of them have PhDs, and they're very good resources, but it's good to have just a basic understanding. But it is a hard course, so you know, if you're not good at chemistry, it might not be the best choice.
Yeah, it wasn't required for me, and I was told by my chemie friends to avoid it like the plague. But I did have to take it eventually for grad school, and it was the only prereq that I didn't have, so I thought, great. But I took it while I was full-time working. I took Orgo 1 and 2, and I had a little bit in high school, so it helped. But I agree. I think the background, it's such a different chemistry from what you're taking in Chem 1 and 2. And it comes up, your materials come up. And yeah, I would recommend, and you know, an option is if you don't have to take it, if you find that it doesn't fit in with your chosen course schedule, you can take it at home over the summer or even after school if you need to. But it's not a bad idea.
I can jump on this train because I have not taken Orgo. I was once again told avoid it like the plague. I became really close with all of my iPersist Chem mentors, and they were like, you probably don't want to take it. And I was like, that's fair. But one of my friends is actually, she worked at the same company as me. She joined and she was there for her semester that I started in September. She started in like February. And so she had an extra semester at school and she had taken Orgo. And so she was able to kind of apply some of that stuff. She had a little bit more undergraduate research that I didn't have. And so when it came to looking up polymers and kind of looking at those specific things, she was able to have a little bit more background and just knew a little bit of, oh, this will interact this way or this will interact this way, where I took Chem 1 kind of as a, yep, I have to take Chem 1. That is my requirement. And like I'm adjusting to freshman year, etc. So I think for that aspect, if you have an interest in going into materials and that more the pharmaceuticals route, it could be very beneficial, especially when it comes time to listen to different companies and different presenters talk about things. You can start to pick out pieces. Like when people start talking about catheters and the heart, etc. I'm like, oh, I know these little things. So it can be beneficial. But if you're like, I have no interest in it, I don't want to go anywhere near it, maybe it's not the best course for you. And if anything, you can probably use it as a free elective, I want to say, and you can pass no credit it. So you can get that exposure, but it can't hurt your GPA. Or, as they said, a lot of the companies do have payback programs. So if you want to take more classes after you are hired, you probably can also just have your company sponsor you and go take an Orgo class, because usually as long as it's beneficial to your job, they like it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome too. It was not required for me, and knowing that my whole goal.
Alyssa, we lost you.
From it, and again, can you hear me on audio?
Yep, I
Okay.
can hear you again.
Okay. Yeah, so I steered clear of it because there was not a lot of chemistry at NASA, and I used all of my extra electives for, like, I did a lot of auditing of classes, I think to the greatest extent possible, because I took things like orbital mechanics, I forget what that course is called, intro to flight. I actually did take a lot of stuff from the aero department, just so that I would understand what I expected all of the other people I'd be working with, where their backgrounds would be coming from. So I highly recommend the pass-fail audit capability, whatever that is, to help round off your education if you have room for the extra credits. Because like in RPI, the fact that you have access to all those amazing professors and research students, like it's just amazing what you can get from it. So I just wanted to put that couple words in.
And very important. And everything that you guys said, I think, is really excellent. And, you know, you're absolutely right that pass no credit is an option. And just to remind you guys, the pass no credit option, the deadline for this fall is November 23rd. So you could get this far into a class not for your major and still have that option. So that's something that we can actually, or absolutely talk about. You can connect with Val about it if Val is your advisor. But I love that advice. So normally I'm super cognizant of the time, which we are after 7 o'clock now. I do not want to guilt anyone into sticking around. However, we did get one more question that is actually a question that I get a lot from students who are trying to choose between biomedical engineering and mechanical engineering. Our panelists, are you comfortable sticking around for one more question? Okay, cool. And again, not trying to guilt anyone. So if you've got to go, really loved having you here. But this is a question I get a lot, and I can't think of a better group of people to ask it to. So the question is, I've read that it can be difficult to get jobs in biomedical engineering because sometimes mechanical engineers are more qualified and that you need a master's degree in biomedical engineering to compete. Biomedical engineering definitely has a lot of range, but some say it's not enough depth in each topic. Have any of you found this to be true?
I think,
I will.
I'll let Alyssa speak
Sorry.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
go
will
for it.
say, I mean, I'm now I'm pretty far out from my degree, but I had no trouble at all. I don't run into a lot of biomedical engineers in my current career field. There's a couple of us. There's other disciplines that manage spacecraft systems, and so there's some of them sprinkled throughout. But I never felt like it was a problem. I mean, if you know what you want and you truly are doing everything in your power to go after it, even on paper, you might not look as competitive. I think that there are ways that you can make up for whatever perceived bias that might be, especially with help from your career development center folks, because personality really goes a really long way. And, RPI is a wonderful school. The biomedical engineering program has a lot of strength because of its diversity. It's not just the standard coursework that every other mechanical engineering candidate will have on their resume. You've taken a lot of random things, and so you've been exposed to different ways of thinking and problems and solutions and things like that. So I think that aspect of the degree is what you can sell if you're worried about people, thinking that you're underqualified because you didn't go in depth.
I'm just gonna add another aspect to that too. When you are applying for jobs and you think that they're going to be looking more for a mechanical engineer than a biomedical engineer, make sure you tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. Like, don't just have one resume and then think that you're going to be done. You need to make sure that the resume you submit for the job really highlights as many of the things that company is looking for as you can possibly do. And then be persistent too. It doesn't hurt to follow up with phone calls and really show that you're interested, because personality is a big factor in the hiring process. And, if you can display that you're the best candidate for them and convince them, through your resume that you have what they are looking for exactly, it's going to help you out a lot.
I can build onto this a little bit as well. As I've been looking at jobs, the biomedical degree allows me a lot of range for what my jobs that I'm looking at. Like, one of the jobs I'm looking at is the potential to map hearts in the operating room side by side with surgeons. And so I don't think any mechanical engineer would be like, that's where I should belong. And so a lot of people that are looking for the biomedical engineers like the cross-sectional area that we provide. Whereas some of the other places that I've been looking, where at the career fair, sometimes it is pretty difficult to find those biomedical field people that you want. So it does take going a little bit out of your way, finding what you're looking for, and hunting those job sites, hunting on Handshake and saying, I'm interested in this specific info session. And sometimes I find that sometimes they say they want a biomedical engineer and then it's a lot of manufacturing or something. And to me, that's not what I want. So I think it's about figuring out what you do want. If you want to have a biomedical degree with mechanics, you probably will work somewhere in like the literal mechanics of some device that's related to the body. And you have that advantage of having a little bit of FDA experience. My company didn't have any preconceived notions that you were required to have that degree ahead of time. Although the mechanical engineers did tend to go a little bit more in the process direction or the quality assurance or something. where a lot of the BME design people were in R&D, et cetera. And some of like I'll say the very high up ones who had experience in the industry a lot were like, oh, I'm a mechanical, but I've worked at however many companies and different projects and stuff to provide that range for myself. So I wouldn't let it be about defining what your degree says on paper. I would let it be about defining your personality, what you're looking for, and how you want to apply that, because some of the mechanical engineers want to work in the biomedical industry. Others of them are like, I want to avoid that like the plague. They have FDA tape all over it. They have anything and everything. I don't want to touch that. So figure out what you want and then work from there. And for me, it's learning and doing new stuff with the human body. So like that's why I'm a biomedical engineer.
And you guys had good answers. I would just add, I had a note on these extra questions that of this question saying, you know, if you're not sure about biomedical engineering and you zoom out and you do go to a mechanical or electrical, you can easily go into biomedical because of that expertise. But if you find yourself a BME, and I will say when I got out of school, when I was looking around, New Jersey has a ton of BME opportunities, right? But not every job really held to mechanical or biomedical, but I'm seeing that so much more nowadays. So it's a great time. And differentiate yourself, like Sarah said, like everyone was saying, talk about the classes that you've taken, and that would be, which would be great because that's how you differentiate yourself from the mechanicals that are vying for your job. Talk about your anatomy classes that you're taking at Albany Med. Talk about your orgo if you're taking it, and talk about how your polymer knowledge is great, and so many polymers are used in medical devices. So there's opportunities for, if you go to mechanical, you can go back, especially with grad school, but if you're a BME, you can differentiate yourself. You just have to think about it and really speak to your capabilities and to your interests with the hiring manager.
Okay, I want to jump on what Raya said. You can be mechanical and you can still take classes, like you have free electives. You can take whatever free electives you want. You could take anatomy, you could take advanced systems physiology and like have that concentration if you're still undecided and realize you have no interest in that at all. But you can also be in BME and say, okay, I have this manufacturing experience. I can do other stuff as well. So figure out what you want, take what you're interested in, and ultimately you'll find what you really want.
Again, amazing answers, and I'm so happy that we took the time to go through that question, and I'm so happy to have you guys recorded answering that question because it comes up a lot, and I feel like there's probably a lot of students listening right now who are nodding and smiling because I think one of the scariest things, and Val can definitely vouch for it too, one of the scariest things, of course, in picking your major is, you know, maybe potentially accidentally limiting yourself. And the reason why many of you in the room are undeclared is because you love so many things. So thank you so much for letting us take a little extra time to answer that one tonight. And now I promise I won't hold on to any of you any longer. I hope you enjoyed this week's Industry Hour. I'm so grateful to our panelists. I loved this Woman Power panel tonight. It was really lovely. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, guys.